Hello, I'm Ben, and this is the DIY Homefront channel. And I've got my Ford pickup truck behind me, and it's time to do some of that repetitive maintenance. I've got to change the oil. Maybe I can inspire you to try doing it on your truck. If you like what you see, think about subscribing. Other than that, let's get into it. All right, let's go ahead and start the truck up and see what it has to tell me. Well, it wants me to put my seat belts on, and it's telling me it's time to change my oil. And we should be able to go to our settings, and there should be the vehicle settings, and we want oil life reset. And you can actually change this. What it is the truck recommends that you change the oil every 10,000 miles. So at 100%, it's going to tell you to change the oil at 10,000 miles. This would be 9,000 miles, 8,000, 7,000. You get the idea. You could change it every 5,000 if you wanted to. I keep mine set for 90. That way I've got a little bit of buffer before the recommended 10,000 mile oil change. And we're going to go ahead and rechange it. So I'm going to hit reset canceled. Hold OK to reset. I'm holding. Oil life set to 90%. Now I should be able to go back out. And there we go. Of course, it doesn't do you much good to reset the oil change light if you don't change the oil, and that's what we're doing next. Pop the hood. Somewhere down here we should have a lever. There we go. If you're ever curious about what kind of oil you need to use, it should tell you right there on the cap. We need 5W20. But I'm going to need a rug to lay on. The truck might be parked at the end of the driveway, which gives me plenty of room to get to the oil filter and the drain plug. But it also means that I'm going to be laying in the dirt, and I don't necessarily like laying in the dirt. I always make sure I've got the right oil filter and oil before I drain anything. The closest auto parts store is 15 miles away, and this is the only vehicle I have to use. So if I drain all the fluids, I'm sort of up a creek without a paddle if I don't have the right stuff to put back in it. There we go. 5.0 engine takes 7.7 quarts. It's always a good idea to look at the scheduled maintenance in the owner's manual whenever you're changing the oil, just to make sure you're up to date on everything. The truck has 114,000 miles on it, so according to this, I need to put changing the engine coolant on my to-do list. Here's my 3/8" sockets and some oil wrenches, so I should have all the tools I need. It's awfully hot today, so here's a safety tip. This is my first bottle of water today. So the trick is to drink it cold and drink a bunch of it and get that cold water in the middle of your body and cool down your core temperature. And don't forget to remove the drain plug and open up the air vent in your drain pan. Otherwise, the oil is going to overflow. Next, I'll position the drain pan so it collects the oil when I take out the oil plug. I'm on my side and can't really see well, so I'm just grabbing a socket and I'm putting it on the drain plug until I find a socket that fits the drain plug. Once I've got the right socket, I'll take out the drain plug. You'll want to make sure that the engine has been running for a few minutes and that it's warm. It will allow the oil to flow out of the engine a lot better. And be careful because it can be hot oil. You also don't want to drop the drain plug into the drain pan. It can be a little difficult trying to get it back out. That was some hot oil. One of the first things I did was take off the oil fill cap on top of the engine. And the reason why I did that is it allows the oil to flow out of the engine block faster when you're underneath it. A few minutes later, and all the oil's about drained out, I'll wipe off where the oil drain plug goes, put the drain plug in, and wipe everything off one more time. I'm sure the drain plug has a specific torque value that it's supposed to be tightened to, but I've never done that. I just tighten the drain plug down pretty good, and then I pay attention to underneath the truck for a few days to make sure that there's no leaks. That's good enough. Now it's on to the oil filter, which gave me a little bit of trouble the first few times because it's in a place that's hard to see. Well, here's the oil filter, and I can turn this off by hand. And there's a chute for the oil to come down, but for whatever reason, the oil never comes down that chute. So a pro tip right here would be to make sure that you have your drain pan positioned so that it catches oil off of both sides of that cross member that it's going to pour onto. And this oil filter is a little trickier to get out than you would think. If you go from the top of the engine going down, it's pretty low because it's right on top of the frame. And if you're trying to go from underneath up to get to it, there's an air dam or an air spoiler that makes it extremely difficult to get to it. And here you can see what I mean about the oil running backwards off of this cross member. There's a chute for the oil to run down to, but the oil really doesn't run down it. I'll take a rag and wipe off the surface that the oil filter rests up against. Before I put the new oil filter on, I'll take a couple of drops of oil and run it around the rubber gasket. That'll make it easier for me to hand tighten the oil filter. And the air dam I was talking about that gets in the way is cutting into my neck. And when you put the filter back in place, you want to tighten it up the best you can by hand, and only by hand. I'll take a few minutes and get anything that had some oil on it cleaned up, put the sockets away, and grab a funnel to put the oil in the engine. And the end of the funnel is going to go into the hole that was in the valve cover on the passenger side of the engine. I've always used Mobil 1 synthetic oil, and I've had real good luck with it, and I don't think I will probably ever change. When these 5-quart containers are new, there's a protective foil cover over the end. Make sure that doesn't end up getting into the engine. There's a mark for each quart of oil that's on the side of these containers. So you need to pay attention to that. And like I said, this engine takes 7.7 quarts of oil. I'll screw the cap back onto the valve cover, and I will check the automatic transmission fluid and the air filter. This truck, like a lot of modern vehicles, didn't actually have a dipstick to check the transmission fluid. I'll clean this dipstick and put it back in. But when I changed the transmission filter and fluid out, I ended up putting an aftermarket product in. And that aftermarket product was a dipstick and the ability to add fluid to the transmission. The transmission fluid is right at the full marker. So you won't have this transmission fluid dipstick on your F-150. With a small funnel, it could also be used as a place to add fluid to your transmission. So to check the air filter, we'll need to remove this connector for the mass airflow sensor. Take a screwdriver to release this clamp so that we can pull back the top cover to the air filter box. I've been using a K&N air filter on this truck since about 36,000 miles. And it's got a little bit of dirt between the pleats, but I don't think it needs to be cleaned. It's not that dirty yet. But I don't like the way it looks, so I'm going to spray a little bit of oil onto the back of it to make sure that it traps all those dirt particles. And it doesn't need much. I'll spray just a little bit on there before I put it back in the filter box and close it back up. The cover for the filter box has these 4 plastic tabs that go in on one side. And I think it's easier to hook up the tube that takes that clean air to the top of the engine before I end up latching the latches. And here you can see those plastic latches. There's 3 of them on this side. I'll use my screwdriver to make sure that this clamp is tight. And then I'll hook back up the mass airflow sensor. Well, the truck's been sitting for a few minutes, so all the oil should have migrated to the bottom of the engine. So I'll pull out the oil dipstick, clean it off, put it back in, and pull it out to check it to make sure that it's got the right amount of oil. And although it's really blurry, it does have the right amount of oil. Well, there you have it. We changed the oil in our 2013 F-150. We checked the transmission fluid, which was good. When I drive it to town and back, I'll check it one more time just to make sure that it's at the right level. I'll also go ahead and put some oil and an oil filter on my list of things to get, so I have it on hand the next time. Well, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, check out the playlist, and I'll see you in another video.